Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Today, I'm looking at Line 6 Catalyst. This is the Mark 1 version, 1B12, 100 watts. I'm just going to go through the channels on it. Really basic, run through each channel without the gain on, and look at a few of the effects while we're at it. It's 100 watts, that's 3 power settings, 100 watt, 50 watt and half a watt for bedroom level practicing. In truth, I've used this practicing in the spare room and it sounds better than my 1 watt Marshall that I've reviewed earlier. It's a lot more usable in the way that the volume sort of handles the tone. With the Marshall, when you turn the volume down too much, it really gets muddy. With this, you retains quite a bit of clarity until you're really at the bottom. But if you keep it above quarter while it's on a half a watt, you still get a lot of clarity while getting a lot of gain on it, if that makes sense. In the box it comes with standard UK power lead and a foot switch. Channel switch and effect on and off. You can set the effect in the software using a PC or a Mac or whichever you prefer to either turn your effects on and off, whether it be a delay, a chorus, or the gain boost. There's like a gain boost function which I'll get to. With the crunch setting, it acts a bit like a tube screamer, and what they've done with each model, they've sort of put what they think is the ideal overdrive in front of it, or the ideal gain booster. Using my 2009 ESP Eclipse standard, I'll start from the clean channel. All the tone controls are all at 12 o'clock. Boost, gain, bass, mid, treble, presence, channel volumes at 12. Effects are both about quarter. Master volume is totally down at the minute, so obviously you can't hear anything. Bridge pickup. That's the clean channel, which I think is sort of modelled on a jazz chorus. The amp's currently on the half a watt setting. Now if I turn it up, that's halfway. The volume doesn't, I don't know if you can tell on the, because I'm just using the camera mics, I don't know if you can tell on the recording, but as you put the volume up, the sound just seems, it doesn't increase that grey, but the sound just seems to get a bit darker. Another thing to note with this amp, I've gigged this amp on stage, on quite a big stage, and I've never been able to put it on the 100 watt setting. It's always been on the 50 watt and always below halfway. Fair enough, it's been mic'd up through a PA, but on stage with a set of acoustic drums, it's loud. You know, it's as loud as a 50 watt valve amp is. This is with the boost. I'll put it back. Volume's about 11 o'clock there. Boost on halfway. Put the boost 3/4. I don't think that channel benefits from having an overdrive in front. I think it's meant to be clean, and you're not meant to mess with it with any overdrive shenanigans. If I put that back, right. If I go on to the boutique, supposedly the boutique channel's modelled on a matchless amp. One of the gripes I have with this is it's got the boutique and the chime. The chime's supposed to be an AC30, I think. which they're basically the same amp. They're on the same circuit. They're made out of the same circuit. I might be wrong. The chime might be on a Fender, but it seems like you've got 1, 2, 3 and a bit clean amps. I think they should have put more heavy amps in it, especially for the kind of people that buy it. You know, it's like you've got one Marshall-y kind of thing in it. Then there's another one that they call dynamic. We'll get to that. I'm jumping forward. If I crank the channel volume up to 3/4 on the put the treble up a bit. It also cleans up like a an actual valve amp, which I like about this. At some point I'm going to do a demo on these clean channels, but with a guitar with a P90 in it. I'll get me a Les Paul Junior out and do it. I'll try and get that done in the next couple of days. Right, gain at 12 o'clock, about 2 o'clock. If I try the boost in at 12, drop some of that bottom off it, put a bit of dime the gain, just for fun. Can't see any difference when you maybe a bit when you get to about 80%. I think that's at max. If I turn the boost up 3/4, put it all the way as well. Just right, turn the boost off. I'll turn the gain right down. So if I can get a bit of a I'm not sure what people who use like matchless and AC30s and stuff like that think about this model in here. I think it sounds pretty good, but I'm not a guy that uses that kind of amps. I'm more a Marshall guy, a clean and dirty with a tube screamer in front of it, and that's sort of me. I'd love to compare it to a real matchless or a real AC15 or an AC30 cranked. That'd be great, but obviously you'd need a studio with loads of soundproofing in it. Obviously you need a studio with loads of soundproofing in it because it would get loud. Right, next one, chime. Put everything back to 12 o'clock. Presence. Channel volumes on 12. Reverb still on 30%. boost. Bloody hell. That puts a bit of top end on it, doesn't it? Knock some of that on. Put it back to... I'd like to know what model overdrive there's stuck in front of it. I've heard it's supposed to be a clone, but I'm not sure on that. Right, if I dime the gain, knock the boost off. That sounds well dark. Sting the boost on. Because I'm sat behind the speaker, effectively, I'm getting a lot of the lower end, so I don't know what it's sounding like out there. So I'm adjusting the EQ on the amp, and I might be miles out, but you know. Right, knock this off. When I bought this amp, the only thing I was really interested in was what the Marshall sound would be like, which is the crunch. Now, if I crank it, turn the boost off. Bit more treble. Treble, yeah. I'll put everything on. Gains on 3/4. Stick the boost in. Boost on full now. But dime the gain as well. One thing I will say about the gain level on it, you can get it where you're in a fairly small room, and I've got both the boost and the gain dimed. They're both on 10. Everything else apart from the channel volume is at 12 o'clock. The channel volume's on 3/4. So the gain structure is like a Marshall full-on screaming with a tube screamer in front of it. When you get it on stage and it's on the 50 watt setting, you lose quite a lot of the gain. It cleans up quite a lot, so you have to stick, as well as using the boost function when you're saving that channel, you also do have to stick either an overdrive or a tube screamer in front of it, because you do lose some of the gain and some of the screaminess that I basically want with the Marshall, because I'm into the old school metal. What was a Marshall Super Lead with a pedal in front of it, just cranked, and that does recreate it fairly well, because it's the Line 6 Marshall model that they're using it, that I think is in the Helix. I think the model that they use is the Plexi out of the Helix, and I think it sounds great, and once you've EQ'd it you can get it bang on. And coupled with the DI function in the back that's got a cab simulator on it through a PA, if you're out in the crowd, there's a lot of people that won't know you're not using a real Marshall, because once it's gone through a mic and PA, and if you're using a real Marshall, once it's mic'd up and it's gone through the PA, I don't think most people will be able to tell the difference from a real mic'd up Marshall Plexi, mic'd up with a 57 or whatever, going through a PA, and one of these that's just going through the cab sim DI'd if it's been EQ'd properly on it, because out front it does sound like the real thing. Fair enough, if you're on stage and the air's not moving you like a real Marshall does, yeah, you will be able to tell because all the dynamics are different. But out front, and if you're just doing a gig and you want to chuck that in the car, yeah, it's brilliant. Right. Now, the dynamic one. Everything on 12 o'clock again. I've got no idea what amp this is supposed to be modelled on. I've seen Henning talk about it, but again, nobody's gone and said, oh, it's this particular amp. I think it might be Line 6's own amp, but it's supposed to be an amp where if you go easier, it'll be more responsive. If you dig in, if I put the gain up, put the boost on, channel volume up. I like that thumpy bottom end it's got. In all honesty, this is a channel I've sort of overlooked because I didn't know what it was, but it's pretty tasty, that. Just EQ it a bit. If I dime the gain. Now dime the boost. Actually, I think that sounds pretty good. Lastly, let's go on to the high gain one. I've tried this, and for me, it's a bit too mental. Again, the boost function off, everything at 12 o'clock, including the channel volume. I think that's modelled on something like either a Bogner Ruberschall or a rectifier. Just take some of that bottom end and put some treble and some presence in it. Right, put the boost function on. I think you can safely assume that you can get this, the gain on this channel, yeah, where it's ridiculous. Both the gain and boost are at 12 o'clock. And I think there's more gain than anybody would practically need there. Maybe you'll get the odd really extreme person who's into that mental thrash that wants something that you can't plug your guitar in without it feeding back, or that you need a massive noise gate in front of it. But that last channel, it's even though I'm a metalhead, I'd sort of leave it alone. It's for the lunatics. Right, I'll quickly go over the effects. I'll go back onto the dynamic one. There's a load of good effects on it. One thing that I think Line 6 are really good at is doing effects such modulation effects such as delays and choruses. I've got a delay set in this. This is just a really simple delay that's set fairly low, just to colour the guitar a bit for solos, because I'm not really a big effects guy at all. I prefer the, you know, just some dirt and not too much delay, because I think for me it muddies it up too much, and I like a bit more clarity in the guitar. But we'll go over it for the sake of half. The reverb as well. There's a choice of reverbs in the software on it. You go in and just switch around which you want. I just have a spring reverb on it. But there's loads of different ones that are, I think they're way a bit above my pay grade. But I just set it where there's a little bit of reverb. I don't like too much, but I don't like it totally dry as well. But you can change the amount of reverb on there, or you can just turn it off. You get the foot switch with it, which has a channel switcher and the effects switcher. You can also assign the effects switch to turn on and off your boost if you want to. Right, round the back of the catalyst, on and off. Standard kettle lead that you get in the UK, on and off switch above it with all the electrical information next to it, and some vents obviously there. The power switch, mute 0.5 watt, 50 watt and 100 watt, obviously mute for if you're recording into a DAW. USB connector for connecting it to your computer, MIDI, foot switch which takes, I'll just unplug the foot switch cable. There's stereo sort of cable if I can. If you plug just a normal guitar cable into it, only one of the foot switches will work. To make it work with both, you need the stereo cable. An auxiliary in for putting an MP3 player or your phone into it to play backing tracks. While we're on the subject, I'll talk about the auxiliary in. I initially bought this amplifier hoping that I could plug in my phone and play backing tracks along to it, but the problem is, if you've got it on the half watt setting, you can't get the volume on your phone loud enough to go over your guitar, so the auxiliary in for me as a practice amp is useless. It may as well not be there. This is one of the things that I had a discussion with somebody about, whether to buy this or the Boss Katana. Apparently the Boss Katana doesn't have the same problem, but I prefer the amp models in this. Headphone socket, just covered, and the effects sender and return. Ground lift switch and a mode switch for the effects loop. With the DI you can set it so you can have different cab sims. For instance, if you use two channels, you could have one cab sim, say a 4x12 if you want on your Marshall kind of channel, or a 2x12 open back if you've got like the Matchless kind of channel, and the cab sims are really good. I use the 2x12 closed back one and it's fantastic. It sounds ballsier than the 4x12, and I use that rather than miking it up with an SM57, and it sounds, you know, out the front in front of a PA you cannot tell the difference at all. That's one of the good things about this amp. Once you come straight out of the DI through a PA, it sounds brilliant. One of the really minor gripes I've got about this amp is this. Would it have been so difficult for them to just screw it in properly? There are screw holes there, and they've been drilled, but they've just not been put in. So it just falls out all over the place. Yeah, I could glue it myself, but it's the sort of thing that you shouldn't need to have to bother with when you buy a new amp. Regardless of the price point, stuff like that should be sorted and it in. So just to clarify a couple of things, this is a Mark 1 catalyst. I bought this brand new from GuitarGuitar about 3 or 4 years ago. At the time they were about £400. I bought it from GuitarGuitar because at the time they were the only people that had them in stock. You can pick them up pretty cheap now. I've seen them going for like 150 quid, which for what it is a bargain. You can gig this amp all day long in any kind of band, in a metal band, in a pop band. I've gigged it in both my metal band and my pop band, and it's great because you've got the combination of whichever amp you want. I'll set one channel to be the matchless channel for the pop kind of stuff, and the other channel on the crunch and dime it for when you play something more rocky, and it works brilliantly. It sounds good through a PA. There's only one thing about it that's a bit of a bugbear for me, and that's to get a solo boost with it, you've got to stick a boost pedal through the effects loop, which I think is a pain in the arse. Yeah, you can get an identical channel and just have two identical channels but with one slightly louder than the other and switch between them when you want to do your solo boost. But apart from that, that's the only whinge I've got about it. It's fairly portable, it's loud, fits in any car boot, and it's loud enough for any gig. You could play that in a small gig without miking it up and it'd still be loud enough. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a... I'm nearly falling off my chair. Please leave a like and subscribe on the way out.